Sorry about that, everyone. Looks like my line went off, but we're back. So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Here on LinkedIn Live, thank you for joining me. I'd love for this to be interactive, so any questions or comments, leave it below. Today, we're going to be talking about the power of walking away from a work, a business, a personal, a love relationship, any kind of situation where you feel as if you are not benefiting from the experience and you feel as if that you're frustrated. Sorry, everybody, if you can still hear me. Sorry, I'm not sure why the internet is going in and out, but let me just. Okay. Let me know in the comments if you see me or hear me. It's going in and out, but we'll continue. So in these kind of situations, we always kind of want to look at ourselves first before we start thinking about the different factors that are happening that are causing discomfort at work, in business, or any kind of personal or professional relationship that you have. And I want to start with you first because I think in Western society, and maybe in most different cultures in different places on the planet, there's a big emphasis on what's happening outside of ourselves or what the things that we can't control. And I used to have this issue, and sometimes in certain situations I do, but thankfully I have a coach. We quite often get tripped up or in a very discomforting situation where we are put in situations where we are blaming or pointing fingers or looking at everything outside of who we are as individuals and our values and our what we stand for to walk away from situations. So the first thing I want to talk about, if you want to walk away from a personal professional relationship, are you wanting to walk away because you have a fear of change? What can that mean? Maybe you're in a new company and you heard through the grapevine, or you heard, a little bird came on your desk and started talking to you metaphorically and told you that the company is going to start downsizing. So now you're all of a sudden thinking about all the issues that you might have caused due to mistakes or learning opportunities or just situations where you were doing your best and now you're starting to think, now I have to start looking for a new company. But who's to know whether your name is on that list of people that the company is going to let go, or who's to know that whoever said what they said is actually 100% factual and accurate, that there's going to be a downsizing at your organizations. So ask yourself, do you want to walk away because you're afraid of changing yourself, looking within yourself, improving yourself? Are there constant triggers that keep coming up with this relationship that you might think this person's a bad person or unfit? But in reality, in every relationship that we have, in every situation that we're in, and I've learned this through my coach, is that everything that you see outside of yourself is a reflection of who you are, who you used to be, or what you need to become. And that can be triggering. So we have to ask ourselves, do you want to jump ship from your marriage? Do you want to jump out of your marriage because this person's triggering you? Well, in my opinion, the most intimate and closest relationship that we can have, other than the one that we have with ourselves, is in a love relationship, in an intimate relationship with somebody. So they are going to trigger you, and that's something that you can't necessarily control unless you want to be one of those adults, grown adults, who just want to be single for the rest of your life. And there's nothing wrong with that either, but you have to ask yourself, are you afraid of change? Do you feel like you are inadequate? Now, let's think about people we've known, or maybe you have gone through this. You might have gone through some kind of stage of interviews for a new type of role that you do have the experience, maybe not the education, but you have the experience, or you have a bit of both, but you feel inadequate. So maybe you get that job, but it's a little bit more challenging in the beginning than you thought. So now you want to quit, or now you might maybe want to call back your old employer or old clients and say you're going to provide these services, or you're going to want to go back to that old job title that you have because you're feeling inadequate. So ask yourself, do you want to walk away from this opportunity because people call it imposter syndrome? Do you feel like you're not worthy of this opportunity? Do you feel as if because the road is a little bit, there are a little bit of speed bumps in your journey that it should be smooth sailing, and so now you want to leave or break that relationship up or whatever the case may be? So think, is it due to your insecurities of inadequacy, not being enough? Now, fear of healing. So to all of my people on the line who have been in any kind of close relationship with people, but you get to a certain place and you're saying, whoa, that's too much love for me, or that's too much closeness, I've got to run. All my runners on the line who are constantly dating, maybe you're constantly going from one job to the next, maybe you're constantly getting in long-term relationships and you hit year 2 or year 5 and you're like, whoa, 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 he or she's talking about marriage and kids, I'm out. So I know it sounds funny, but there are many people out there who are afraid of healing, which means why I bring up these examples is when you get to a very uncomfortable place in your work, career, personal, or even love relationships, where not necessarily somebody's triggering you, but it's going to the next level. It's going to the next step of that relationship, and you want to run. That's an opportunity for healing. That's an opportunity for inner work, shadow work, spiritual work, religious work, whatever you want to call it. Everybody has their own description of it. But sometimes we quite often run away from things because it's telling us it's time to elevate, it's time to grow, it's time to level up, whatever you want to call it. It's time to become the best version of ourselves, and you might not think that you're ready. So ask yourself, are you afraid of growing and going through those steps of therapy, or getting a mentor, or an executive coach, or a life coach, whatever the case may be, or sitting down with your grandma and having that realistic conversation to see what grandma thinks? Because sometimes grandma is the healer of our home. Sometimes it's mom, sometimes it's dad. But ask yourself, are you afraid of healing and dealing with those issues and traumas from your past or your present? And so instead of doing that work, you're running from the job because the boss or someone is mean in the team. But there's always going to be somebody on the team that's going to make you feel triggered or uncomfortable. So how often do you want to keep running, right? Ask yourself that. And then the last thing, are you getting out of a situation out of a fear of rejection? So I remember a long time ago, I know sometimes I make some hip hop song references, but anybody on the line who knows the female rapper, Missy Elliott, and one of her songs, she said, this was a long time ago, she said something along the lines of, she usually breaks up with a guy that she's dating before he breaks up with her. So I'm sure if somebody referenced that line and went back to her early 20s, or I'm not sure how old she was when she made that song, that fear of rejection often causes people to want to pull the plug on a relationship, on a new friendship, on a family connection, on networking, on going to the networking group every month and meeting new people. But now you think you're going to be rejected because you're not the most senior or the most educated person, and you don't want to do that speech that you have to do at Toastmasters because you don't want to out yourself and show that you don't have something. So now you pull the plug on the Toastmasters every month because you don't really want to show people that you're the least experienced person in the room. This can often cause people to walk away from situations, and I can keep going down the list, but I just wanted to go over these things, some realistic questions to ask yourself. Now, you also have to ask yourself, what do you value? What is important to you? I learned about a value system several years ago, again, working with my coach, and I realized how powerful that is in certain type of relationships, not necessarily friendships, but I think if you are even if you're in a work relationship or a love relationship, ask yourself, what are your biggest priorities? What do you value in life? Because you could be seriously in a situation where you're waking up every day and you don't feel that what the company stands for or what the person you're in a relationship with is projecting, or maybe you're one of those kind of people during the pandemic where you've had a lot of time to spend with this person, or you've had a lot of time to reflect on this job or business situation, and you're starting to realize the person you were before the pandemic, you're a brand new person now and you value different things, and for whatever reason that love relationship can't elevate, or that client or that customer isn't seeing eye to eye, or the company you work for values money and growth and statistics and meeting expectations, but then what they don't value is having compassion, work-life balance, having deep conversations, just random, hey, how are you doing, and how's the work going, and stuff like that. So ask yourself, do your values align in this relationship? And if sometimes it's just you just having a little chat with the person, having a chat with your boss, and kind of asking yourself, because sometimes we might not think certain things value to the your boss, but it is a value in the organization. So sometimes just having a conversation can really help align or not align what's best for you in that kind of area. Now, are you setting boundaries, but there's still a lack of respect? And so let's just give a real easy example here. Let's take, for example, let's say you're dating somebody and they rarely come on time for your dates. So you're a really nice person, and maybe this person has several jobs or they've got several things going on in their life, but for every time you meet up for the date, this person is always late. And they may let you know they're going to be late, or they don't. And at this point, you're starting to wonder, should you walk away because they're always late? But I always lean on the opportunity to get vulnerable with this person and see where they're at. And they might tell you something they've never told you before, no matter how long you've known this person. Maybe they're taking care of their mom, and their mom got sick right before they got out the door, so they had to give the mom the medication. Maybe there's a legitimate reason why this person keeps showing up late. And maybe they lack communication skills to be able to text you and say, hey, can we reschedule in several hours at this time versus that time, this day versus that day. Now, if you set those boundaries with this person and they keep lacking the communication skills to cancel or reschedule, or they keep coming up with the same response, you have to ask yourself, if you're dating the person and you want to be in something long term, do you want to be with somebody long term, get married to the person, or have a common law relationship with that person, meaning you're not legally married, but you're with that person, living, sharing expenses and everything, where they can't even tell you they cannot show up for a date? What else could they not tell you? So you kind of have to backtrack and start with the conversation, see if there's any way for a solution. And if there is, great, let's clap, and let's celebrate. This person understands that this is important to you, but think along those lines. Now, if it's a toxic environment, if it's a toxic relationship, of course, we're not here in 2023 to be in any kind of toxic experience just for a paycheck, or just to have somebody to go on a date with every Friday. And I'm not laughing at anybody who's gone through this before. I've had many situations in my life where I've maintained friendships and dated people that I shouldn't have even said hello back to in the first place, or had a conversation with in the first place. Sometimes we as individuals are in places and spaces where we feel isolated or lonely, and we don't really know how to sit with ourselves and walk away or create distance with friendships that are not necessarily helping us grow, or it's just the same thing over and over again. Every 5-10 years, it's the same thing, and you're elevating and growing. You're not expecting that person to be at your pace, because that could never be possible, but it's just toxic. And so these can be situations where your parents are toxic, and right, so do you need to cut off your parents? I'm not sure what your situation is, but ask yourself, is there some toxicity that's causing you to have this negative energy spill over into the quality of your work? You're not sleeping, you're not eating. And even if you're doing therapy, there's still some residue deep inside your soul that is causing some friction, because this person just brings the heavy energy that you really don't need. So ask yourself that. And then is it a one-sided relationship? Meaning, Are you going to work every day and you're pumping out all these stats and you're making millions of dollars? Maybe you're in sales, business development. It doesn't really matter. You can be a custodian and save your organization money, right? So are you in a situation where the company is getting all these benefits from you being there, but you're not seeing anything? You've been there for 20 years, no promotion, no bonus, no profit share, nothing. Like, these are the kind of things that you have to ask yourself, is this one-sided? Have I had the conversation about my values and my needs and what's not working? And if after this conversation, is it going in the right direction or is it going in the left direction? Now, the other thing you want to pay attention to is, how are you feeling when you're in this environment? How are you feeling when you're around these people or this person? Because your feelings are very, very there. I've called it a couple of times in a couple of previous live streams. It's kind of like a thermometer, and it tells you, it's helping you gauge whether this connection is right or not. And so before you start saying, oh, every time I go to work, I feel tense, is it really the work environment, or do you have some issues you need to work on? And I know this conversation is probably not necessarily going in the direction that you want it to be, but sometimes there are little things within ourselves that we can't necessarily articulate or explain, that a coach or a mentor or therapist, whatever the case may be, can identify that this is actually, this issue that you have at work is stemming from something that happened to you in childhood, something that happened in your last marriage, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? So sometimes it's not the work environment. Sometimes you have to work on some healing and clean out those cobwebs within your soul, or those, band-aids that you've put over your pain, that you need to now heal, instead of just keeping that band-aid on there. That these are just metaphors, right? And then the other thing you want to ask, it's funny because Jada Pinkett Smith has been on the hot seat. She has this new book. A lot of people are questioning her when it comes to her legitimacy of her stories and recounts of her marriage with the comedian and actor Will Smith. But she was recently on the TV therapist personality Ayanla's podcast, and she admitted that she, having high expectations in anything, any relationship, any environment, is it can really ruin something good. And so ask yourself, do you have high expectations of your boss to come to work with a smile on their face, to, instead of have a little shrewd personality, to be kind and soft and gentle? Are you having expectations of people when you know for sure they're not working on themselves, but your expectation is, this is how you treat people, so therefore people should treat you the same? Or this is how you show up in your friendship, and therefore your friend has to do the same? That's impossible. I used to have that kind of mindset too, and I started working on myself, that, well, if I speak to this person like this, they should come to me with compassion and kindness. And people are not built like that if they're not doing the inner work. So ask yourself, are your expectations too high? Are you judging others? Are you showing up at work? You're doing all these courses. Maybe you have a little side business, or maybe you're doing a lot of great things in your community. And so now you're coming to work and you're feeling like a leader, and you're asking yourself, why am I here? Nobody here's at my level. And are you judging people and having high expectations of them to be this superhero person behind the scenes, or to be this CEO, when people don't want that for themselves? So ask yourself that too. Now, a couple more points. I know we're going over the cusp of 20 minutes. The glitches in the internet system and StreamYard were, but I'll continue to keep going. So now, how can you say goodbye without ruining a connection with a work situation, or a love relationship, or a friendship, or even a family member? Sometimes we have to create some healthy space between ourselves and others, right? So the first thing that I would do is I would say something like this. So first, mention your goals and what's not working. Try not to point the finger at the boss, the company, your friend, the person you're dating, because that can cause an argument, or that can turn the person into wanting to work it out. But I did this, but I did that. We've been in those situations where we're kind of blaming people before we walk away, and then they get into, but wait, I just bought you flowers, or I just gave you a promotion, you're leaving already. And so you don't want to, you try not to point it at them. And I say that because it's not our job to tell a company where they go wrong. That company will continue to do what they do, whether you're there or not. It's not our job, especially, let me take it back a bit, especially if you've already shared your concerns, especially if you communicated your concerns to a person, your boss, etc. Like bringing it up again before you walk away, it's just going to cause friction, right? So this is what I would say. If you're about to walk away from a friendship, a relationship, whatever, I've been, do you have time? Ask them, do you have time to speak? Yes, okay. Or you schedule a time, and then you say, I've been doing a lot of thinking. I've been feeling very grateful that you brought me onto this work opportunity, or I've been feeling grateful to get to know you. The friendship ending situations or relationship ending situations that you have to go through. But I'm thinking about my long-term goals and my values, and they don't really align. So I say I didn't say you don't align or this company doesn't align, because what would happen if they call you back, management changes, it's where you wanted it to be or where you were hoping it to be, and they call you back because you ended the conversation on a high note, right? Instead of negative. So then you say, and then you say, this has happened, and this is how I felt, we were in the meeting and I felt as if I was thrown under the bus. You didn't say you threw me under the bus. You said I felt as if I was thrown under the bus. This has happened several times, and I just don't believe that this work experience aligns with my values. Now we get silent because the person's going to start to think, wow, what did I do? What did I say? And they will. The other thing that I just want to say is don't have any expectation on anybody being happy with you walking away from their friendship, that relationship, that work or business experience. We can't control how people feel about the end of circumstances. All you can do is express it without pointing fingers, if and only if you've already talked to this person, this group of people, about your concerns, right? And then other points that I want to kind of bring up is if you're in an unhealthy environment at work or business, or an unhealthy relationship, let's take a look here. Again, you bring it back to your beliefs and values. If they align, if you've expressed and shared some concern with them already, then and there's no room for change, then there's nothing that you can do really. And you can also express to them too that I just don't feel that this is a win-win situation. When I come to work, the quality of work is not at par because I just feel disconnected here, or I'm not able to show up at 100%. I'm doing everything I can do in the background. I've got my mentors and coaches that I'm relying on. I've been reading books and yada, 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 but it's just not a win-win. I'm not showing up at 100%. The quality of work is not the best. So I don't think this is something I can continue to move forward with. And the shorter that you can create these sentences instead of unloading your personal trauma or issues, which I really think should be dealt with a therapist, because sometimes when we have these kind of goodbye situations and we tell people, oh, you felt trauma, or you felt overwhelmed, or you have anxiety because they did this. How can I say this in the most light way? There's nothing, my coach taught me this, there's nothing that anybody can do to disrupt your happiness unless you have not cleared up things that have happened to you in the past. Yes, there are a lot of things that people can do to us to hurt us, but depending on who we can get help from and where we're at in life, the same thing can happen to 10 people. And as a result, they can all feel and express different things. So I just want to be clear that we're leaders take all responsibility for where they're at. Even if somebody disrespects a successful leader, they will never necessarily point at the person and say, oh, well, I got out of hand because they got out of hand in the first place. No, They say, okay, that's where that person is in their life. And I walked away because I didn't want to entertain that conversation, right? So I think that these points that I left here are really, really strong. I know I'm going over about 5 or 6 minutes over, but I'll just do a quick light recap. So before you walk away from a situation, ask yourself, do you feel that you are not enough for this opportunity? Do you feel as if you're going to be rejected? So before you're rejected, you're going to walk away? Are you feeling like this new situation or this change is going to uh, create some kind of healing work that you definitely don't want to do? And that's why you want to jump ship? And or do you have a fear of change? And I can go down the list with these, but we'll focus on that. And then the second segment is, do your values align with this person? Does what you value align with your boss, with this organization? Have you set those boundaries, but there's still no respect? Do you feel like you truly are in a toxic environment, or are you triggered by things that you haven't healed with, and that's your responsibility? And is this a one-sided beneficial relationship or environment? Excuse me. How do you feel mostly? Do you feel as if you're triggered most of the time, and being triggered by other human beings, unless they're not doing it intentionally, that's just normal human reaction, right? And do you have high expectations for your boss, for your team to evolve? All my leaders on the line, you set an expectation. 1 week later, are you now expecting them to be at 100 when they're at 30 or 50, right? Are you judging other people and saying, well, I'm too good, or I have a master's degree, so I don't need to be on this team. I should be running the team. So ask is, are there a lot of I, me, and these thoughts? Because you could be judging people. You could have high expectations through your journey. And while you're going through your journey, so is your team. While you're going through your journey, so are your clients and your customers and your work environment and your love relationship. So ask yourself that. And then when you say goodbye, to do your best. If you've already spoken to this person or these people about your concerns and nothing seems to change, or there's no win-win outcome for the both of you, you have to ask yourself, you have to kind of actually express to them that it's not necessarily them, but you express what your concerns are. And then without saying you might say this situation, or instead of all of you, you say this encounter, or this. You kind of have to, this is going to be really hard for all my people on the line that are really used to kind of pointing the finger at people, but you can do some exercises as time goes by, and you'll start to notice that the less you point fingers at others, the less people are pointing fingers back at you, right? And then last but not least, if you are in an unhealthy relationship or environment, you should definitely express as you're walking away that your beliefs don't align, your values don't align, your priorities don't align. It's not a win-win outcome. If it's a work situation, the work quality is not up to par, and you're doing your best in this environment, or you can't show up at 100%. And you'd be surprised how some work experiences, leaders, managers, supervisors will, or in your relationship, how they will start taking accountability. Or if they're just in a mental place and space where they think there's nothing wrong with a toxic work environment, because we've all kind of experienced this before, that it's time for you to walk. So I hope all of these points were very helpful. Thank you so much for joining. Anybody who else was on the line earlier and saw the intermittent in and out of the live stream, the connection was on, but for whatever reason, it was flickering on the platform. Thank you so much for your time, and take care. Bye.